Well, Biddy was, and she wasn't a witch, you see.
No, he never believed. He said she was a witch because she did nothing but good.
Here we are again, weeks later.
We're back, witches. Sorry.
Weeks later.
Yeah, definitely weeks later. I couldn't help myself making a witches joke. And yes, Emily is being very truthful.
We have not spoken to each other in at least 10 days.
We haven't spoken to you guys in about 2 weeks.
A fortnight.
A fortnight. Emily loves that word.
I love it.
Well, at least like that video game that all of the kids love, it's spelled differently than like actual Fortnite. It's like Nite.
Oh.
Thank God.
I wonder if it's supposed to mean the same thing.
I don't know. It's probably like some sort of play on words.
Like you build forts at night or something.
Yeah. I don't know what the premise of that game is. And I don't care.
Me
Don't
either.
tell me. I could not care less what the premise of Fortnite is.
I don't want to know.
But yeah, as somebody who has to research a lot of folklore, this is my formal Taylor Swift. Why would you do that to us? Why would you name an album folklore? Because it's messing up all of the Google searches and all of the Reddit searches.
I am so mad at her.
Oh, are we going to piss off the Swifties? Is this...
I'm fine with her. Just don't name your album folklore, please. That's all I ask.
Yeah, we're too late. Especially when you're trying to find something on Reddit, because there are a lot of Swifties on Reddit, apparently. Which,
yeah,
I
so
wouldn't have thought like Reddit was a big Swiftie place, but I guess they're everywhere.
Yeah, Reddit always has felt to me sort of like the incel place to be. But then I realized that Reddit is kind of for everybody. You just have to find your place on Reddit.
Reddit's good for like if you need like a very quick question answered that you can't find online, because you can usually find somebody who says they're an expert or like might know something about it.
Yeah.
I also go there for validation when there is like something that's annoying me. I'll usually find a post on Reddit that like somebody else has like posted. And I'm like, yeah, it's not just me.
Oh, when you're like, I hate when people do
XYZ
blank, 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 or whatever.
This like YouTuber that I watch has this really annoying habit of XYZ, and then you go on and somebody has written like a full 5-paragraph post about how they hate her. And I'm like, I won't go that far, but it's nice to be validated.
Have you heard of Miss Rachel?
Yes.
Okay. For those who don't know, she does speech videos for little kids where she tries to help them learn words and things like that. And they sing and dance and whatever.
She's a preschool teacher, isn't she?
I think so. I think she's like an early education teacher of some sort. But her husband creeps me out so badly, and he's in the videos. And so I Googled Miss Rachel husband creepy. Yes. And I found a whole Reddit thread about a bunch of different moms and parents who are just like, yeah, my kid cries when he comes on.
Yes. There's always somebody on Reddit who's annoyed about the same thing as you are. It's so validating.
Yeah.
You're like, oh my God, I thought this was just me. Or like,
yeah.
So I started watching Only Murders in the Building. And I was like, because I've never watched anything with Selena Gomez, and I don't follow her on Instagram or anything like that, but I was literally like, has her voice always been like that?
I was wondering the same thing when I first started watching it. I was like, did she always sound like this?
I was like, did she always sound like this? Now, like, people on Reddit were giving like explanations to do with her health and stuff. I don't know if any of that is true. I'm not going to speculate on her health, but yeah, it was very validating that I was not the only person to go, what the fuck is up with her voice?
Yeah.
Because she kind of sounds like she doesn't open her jaw or something.
I was just going to say, she sounds like she doesn't open her mouth.
Yeah. Like, who was really bad for that was Blake Lively when she was in Gossip Girl. It'd be like, no, Chuck, you got to meet me at the plaza or whatever the fuck it was. And you're like, oh my God, open your mouth.
I did watch Gossip Girl, but I don't remember that. I might have to. I don't know if I want to watch it again.
No,
but
you don't. Because like when you're, as I saw like some guy reacting to Gossip Girl as like a man in his 30s, and he's like, Chuck Bass is like not going to high school, but he like bought a hotel and he's 17. And you're like, yeah, that was kind of unbelievable, wasn't it?
All of their situations were so strange.
But it suffers from the same thing that a lot of those TV shows suffer from. It's like, just age them up to college. why do they have to be in high school?
Why are they 25-year-olds playing 16-year-olds?
Just say they're in college.
Yeah.
What was the other show that I was like, Euphoria? I know you didn't watch.
I was going to guess Euphoria.
Yeah. Euphoria would just make so much more sense if they were all in college. They have like online like sex work accounts and like they're going to like raves and stuff like that. And you're just like, yeah, you're 16. That's not happening. Like there's very few 16-year-olds who are going to raves. Or maybe I'm very sheltered. I don't know.
That's what I thought. I thought that my high school years were going to be way scarier. And when I say scarier, I mean that I thought people were going to be doing all these like horrifically bad things. Mm-hmm. Like hard drugs and stuff like that. And when it's like, no, most kids were smoking weed or like drinking.
Yeah.
And making bad choices in sex partners.
Yeah. Like we had in the UK and Ireland, we had Skins, and that was sort of...
Oh, I remember hearing about that.
Skins walked so Euphoria could run sort of thing. It was like very much debauchery and parties and ragers and drugs and all of that kind of stuff. And a lot of it was very unbelievable. And they were like 18, I think. Well, like not like the... Like Effie in Skins, she was like 14 when she was first on it. And she was like smoking and being very like mysterious. And you're like, you're 14.
Please.
Go hang out at shopping centre or whatever the hell it is. Skins would have been like that where like I was like the exact age demographic for Skins, but like nobody that I knew in my life was behaving like them.
Did you ever watch The In-Betweeners?
Yes, I did.
I mean, it was a little more believable the way like they would kind of like fall flat on their faces.
Exactly. Yeah. And like the whole like all the social pressure of like we're invited to the pub at the same time as everybody else from our year. Like it's so exciting. Like that was more like relevant to my life.
Yeah, or that, oh my God, I'll never get over it. Like the one guy who was like, acted like he was so cool and stuff like that. And they would always call him on his bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah. They go on holiday after like they finish school. And the guy's like, you shit on floor, €50. So we used to shout that at like my cat Ripley when we first got her. Because that's what she used to do. Shit on floor. Funny. She owes us about €9,000 at this stage.
Yeah, my brother and I would quote it a lot because we watched it together. He's not my fucking friend.
Bus wankers.
Yeah, bus wankers. Thumbs up, friends.
Friend.
Yeah, old friend. Speaking of forever,
we've been talking about forever.
And we should talk about witches.
Witches,
who are forever.
You're back for the second part of our witchy miniseries. I don't know if we're calling it anything else, but let's just call it our witchy miniseries. Is it mini? We don't know, but it's a series. This part is my episode on witchcraft within the Celtic region.
I can hear the pipe flute now. Is that what they call it?
The pipe flute?
Pipe flute.
Like the tin whistle?
Yeah, maybe that's
that kind of thing?
Yeah. Wow, I failed.
The pipe flute. There's like an Irish instrument that's kind of like the bagpipes called the uilleann pipe. I thought that's what you meant.
Pan flute. I was thinking of a pan flute.
Oh, the pan flute. I understand. Okay. So just the crash course on the Celtic region. So we're talking way back to the Iron Age, which was after the Stone Age. Pre-Roman, but also sort of contemporary to the Romans. Like they overlap.
Contemporary,
yeah, to the Romans. Like they,
that's the word for that?
When somebody is your contemporary, they exist at the same time as you.
I never knew that that's what that meant.
So the Celts inhabited what would have been like the northwestern part of Europe, where I am coming to you hot from. Their regions that I would have learned in school are Brittany, which is not as in Spears. Brittany, as in the northwestern extremity of what was Gaul, is now France. Cornwall, which is the southwest of England. It's the very little tip. Ireland.
Just the tip.
Just the tip. That's the Cornish travel slogan. Cornwall, just the tip. You guys can have that, Cornwall.
Oh, no.
Apart from Ireland, we have the Isle of Man, which is a little tiny island that's in the Irish Sea in between Ireland and England. If you zoom in really, really hard on Google Maps, you can see it. Scotland and Wales. Those would be the Celtic nations. The only thing about Celtic history is a lot of it has been recorded by the enemies, because the Celtic language was not as detailed as, say, the Roman language, Latin, and most of Celtic history is oral history, so it's a lot of stories being handed down, probably being added to, subtracted from. So when we have recorded history, we have to remember that it is being recorded by what were essentially enemies of the Celts. So that would colour a lot of it. So there are a lot of things that are not very favourable towards the Celts, and it's not exactly a reliable source.
And what is that quote? Like, history is told by...
History is written by the victors, is that right?
Yeah, something like that.
And also history of the Celts only begins in the 6th century AD, and you're talking Celtic history back like BC. So that's like 1,000 years after the beginning of it.
Wow.
Kudos to professors and to researchers in Celtic history, because they have quite a difficult job to try and actually hammer out what is real and support everything with archaeological finds and dig through all of the crap to figure out what was the real story. So the good stuff that we're all here for was the Celtic magical systems. The episode before last, we talked about how Indigenous cultures do tend to focus their belief systems on nature. And I mentioned that the Celts are like that too. All of their customs, methods of worship were connected to nature in some way. All Celtic peoples honoured the oak tree. They also venerated mistletoe, which usually grew upon the oak tree and blossomed in winter. So when the oak was bare, there was mistletoe. So it was like a perpetual sign of life.
That's so cool.
Yeah. They used to gather mistletoe. They believed that mistletoe, when solemnly gathered, made all animals fertile and fruitful, and that mistletoe could destroy every kind of poison, which, wouldn't that be cool if that was true?
That would be really cool.
Yeah, be handy, because mistletoe's fucking everywhere here.
That is so funny, because I don't think I've ever seen the real plant.
Have you not? You've seen like the fake ones, or like the ones that you buy in shops and stuff. You've never seen it in the wild. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a fake one that I hang up in my house, like a little bundle with a red ribbon on it. I'm like, it's my mistletoe.
If you go on any like little forest walks or anything, like are bound to see mistletoe and a lot of ivy, and then like we call them whins. I don't know what that's what my dad calls them. They're like, it's like this bush that looks like it's fire tipped. They're like really cool looking. I don't know if they're actually called whins, or that's just like a colloquial thing that they're called. That's like those are like big plants here.
Yeah. What's interesting is that we have ivy here, but it's considered an invasive species.
Yeah. It was probably brought over.
It's not native to this environment.
Good at choking things.
I was going to say, and it's real good at sticking around and ruining everything.
Yeah. In Ireland, the Druids really liked yew trees. Yew as in Y-E-W.
No, you.
You.
No, you.
It was yew wood that they used to cut their boards from to write on. So have you ever seen Ogham writing? So it's like...
I'm sorry, what?
Ogham. Ogham. So it's like...
No.
You see it a lot in art here. It's a vertical system of writing. It's an early alphabet. It's the only way of the Irish language was ever recorded before we had the Roman alphabet.
Interesting.
You usually see it on like tombs and on like signposts and stuff.
Okay.
It's not read horizontally the way we would normally understand writing to be. It's actually a vertical form of writing. It kind of looks like runes as well, a little bit.
Right. It's very simple. It's kind of just like lines straight across, diagonal lines, like X's.
I've seen like
triangles.
I know people who have it as tattoos. You see it,
of course,
inscribed in jewelry. You see it on pottery, on like wall hangings, stuff like that. It's cool. Like anybody who comes here and you buy anything like Celtic art on it, it'll usually have Ogham on it somewhere, along with all those swirling patterns that we always associate with Celtic art as well.
Did you roll your eyes?
I know. It's just because, when something becomes so like commercialized that you're just like...
It's like the live, laugh, love signs.
Pretty much. Or like, those Triskelay patterns. There's always Triskelay patterns everywhere. It's like the 3 swirls. And they represent like past, present, future and all of that kind of stuff. They're everywhere.
Yeah.
It's not to say that it doesn't have significance, but it's just like you see so much of it, it's like overexposed.
Right. It reminds me of how people call it the bridesmaid font now, but it was kind of like if you like hand drew letters.
Yes.
It used to look really good, and now it looks dated and ugly and beaten to death because everybody's used it.
Exactly. So yeah, the yew tree was used like a board so that they could inscribe Ogham writing on them because they didn't have paper. The Egyptians hadn't brought it this far yet. And then for some other magic trees, the blackthorn and the Rowan, they all had like magical properties or magical beliefs attached to them. In fairy tales, a bunch of ivy would play the part as a magic shrub. A fairy's favourite resting place was beneath a hawthorn tree. I talked about like how a lot of Celtic records are from a Rowan perspective. They were specifically the Gaulish Celts because the Romans would have had a lot more interaction with them. The Romans conquered Britain, not Scotland, and they did not conquer Ireland. Apparently because they were scared off by the Celts. We don't know. We like to say that. Let's just like hear the way the Romans would speak about the Celts when they were recording them in their history. So the wife of the Emperor Augustus was shocked by the loose morals of Celtic women.
Oh.
She actually confronted one who was the consort of a Gaulish king, so not his wife, but one of his ladies. The consort replied, "We Celtic women obey the demands of nature in a more moral way than do the women of Rome. We consort openly with the best of men. You allow yourselves to be debauched in secret by the vilest."
Wow.
Burn.
Yeah, seriously.
What a sick burn. At least we're not being like screwed in private by complete assholes. Because the Celts really venerated like warriors, and they were very like warmongering race of people.
Yeah.
You know, the stronger you were, the more respect you had. So I guess if you're a warrior, you were able to have your pick of the women. And we'll talk a little bit more later about the role of women and how like relationships and sex and marriage all like related to each other. Because I think it's really interesting to see the way like when we look at witchcraft, like how actually this reflected the way women in Celtic society were viewed. So guess what, Past Neve? We're actually not going to do that because the episode was 90 fucking minutes long. All of that about Celtic marriage and relationships and the legal system is going to be an extra content Pinecones episode just for you, and it's going to be released on the Saturday of our week off. So you can check it out then. Celtic women didn't really have good manners, apparently. Amanius Marcellinus, in his description of the manners and customs of the Gauls, describes what he called the furor heroicus, which is the heroic fury of the Gallic women, who were, quote, large as men with flashing eyes and teeth bared.
I mean, it sounds like you.
Yeah, it does. So probably the most like famous magic practitioners in Celtic life were the Druids. So we'll talk about the Druids in different types of Celtic societies. In Gaul, it was interesting. So the Druids occupied the forefront of social rank. They actually had a national network and they had communal assemblies. So they were like properly organized, like almost like an organized religion. And the power that they had in this organization, they were able to influence and decide the choice of magistrates. They performed divine services. They brought offerings, explained oracles. They were doctors and teachers, and they acted as arbitrators in the absence of state jurisdiction, and they were able to enforce their decisions afterwards. So they were basically judge, jury, executioner, doctor, priest, everything. They were
Quite
rich,
a lot of titles,
and despotic, and the words here were they actually held the people in subjection. So they were basically like rulers. They were not answerable to many other people.
Wow.
But that was in Gaul. The Druids of Ireland weren't quite the same level of power. It's theorized that part of the reason why they didn't reach the same like heights of power and rule was because in Ireland you also had the File. The File is the poet, so the poet and the storyteller. Sometimes the Druid and the File were the same person, but they almost had a counterpart in society, meant that you also had other people in their world who are just as respected.
It's so interesting because when I think of Druids, I don't think of people who have a lot of power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I kind of think of them being sort of like the weird outcasts of society.
Yeah. And that would have been more reflective of what they were like in Ireland. Like they would have been, you know, a traveling man who went round and were like part of the quote unquote court system. And we'll talk a little bit about the legal system at this time. So Irish Druidism remains, each Druid would have been tied to their clan or their geographical area. Whoever they were affiliated with, they would sort of stay with that person rather than having like a big network of Druids that they were meeting up with. It seemed like it was more like a calling than like an occupation where you could rise through the ranks. And Druids were more like early priests and like advisors and counselors than what later became priests and what Gaelic Druids were. They were able to gain their respect through their knowledge and through all of their studying. They study for literally like years to become Druids, like almost like their whole lives.
Oh yeah, because we were joking about like once you become one, then and then you die.
Yeah, it's like, yay, graduation. And then, like, funnily enough, what they look like is they had their own like white robes of office. I would have always thought they looked like dirty and had like sackcloth basically, but no. They had white robes of office and a peculiar tonsure or like haircut, you know, like the monks' haircuts. They had those haircuts as well.
Oh, interesting. These Druids are not who I think they are. Or who I thought they were.
Yeah, so it became a little bit more organized as the society evolved, but they still were like advisors and wise men and all of that other stuff that you would probably associate with them. And then they were also keepers of like sacred knowledge and magic. So they had like hymns, their own rules for prophecy, their formulae for charms, as you were talking in our previous episode, like the recipes for curses and charms. So the Druids would have had that as well. They were able to read and write, whereas not everybody would have been able to. They are responsible for the Ogham writing that we were talking about.
They're responsible for it, like they started it or
created it and
they
perpetuated
it. Yeah.
it.
Okay.
And that was because their education was actually a formal form of education, which wouldn't have been common. More interestingly, there were female Druids. Talk of upon a British island famed for its oracles, there were Druids who lived in perpetual virginity, which of course they did.
Right. Like the priests.
Although with Irish Druidesses, as they're referring to them in this text.
Also known as Druids.
I know, it's like a priestess, Druidess. Irish Druidesses were married and known to like fight in wars. I would love to think that they're actually like using magic during these wars, but I don't think so. There was one Druidess called Du or Dove. It's D-U-B-H. She was married and she killed a rival, and her rival for her husband's affections by drowning her in a flood which she created.
Wow.
In fairness, if you're going to sleep with anybody's husband, don't sleep with somebody who has magical powers and can cause a flood that would drown you.
Yeah. Maybe pick somebody else.
In Celtic society, there were magical women apart from the Druidesses. We have the country midwife, who was the Ban Glynne, the wise woman, who is the Ban Feasa, the corpse washer, or the layer out, who was the Ban Van, which means white woman.
Wait, the what? The Ban Van?
Ban Van, yeah. Ban as in Irish woman, Van as in Irish word for white. Yeah, so it basically means white woman. The Ban Chincha, who is the crying woman at a wake who does all of the keening.
Wait, did we talk about this before?
We talked about the keening
like the woman who gets hired to cry, basically.
Yeah. In our Banshee episode, because there's a theory that the Banshee is the ghost of a keening woman. So
yeah.
That's part of it. There was the category of magical women who were the cunning women or the cunning folk. So they had specific rituals and magical protective devices. Their primary function was to counter fairy attacks. And they
I love that phrase, counter fairy attacks.
Yeah, fairy attacks. So they would have had
good.
like the knowledge of the land and all of that to like make their potions and their amulets. They usually made amulets out of mistletoe and Rowan.
I think we need a sound effect for every time Rowan is brought up.
Yeah. Rowan. And probably their most important function was to prevent attacks on cattle because, as I talked about, definitely big cow people over here.
That gave me a very interesting visual. Big cow people.
Cow people.
It's like the boy cow.
A boy cow, yeah. We have a callback to our changeling episode as well. So the cunning folk used to be the ones that would warn you to dress male children in female clothing to stop them being replaced by fairy changelings. And I mentioned that a while ago as well. People who made poitín, which is like the Irish moonshine, they were especially vulnerable to changeling attacks or changeling swaps, I guess. Usually if you had a male child being dressed as a female child, it was because their father was a poitín maker.
Oh.
And then just really quickly, another area that we have Celtic customs was the Isle of Man. So they have a big culture of healing and cunning folk. There are certain well-known families on the Isle of Man who have inherited folk medicine, knowledge of folk medicine, passed all the way down from Celtic times right up until modern times. They would refer to them as the Manx Witch. So it was a wise man or woman who worked their spells and charms, both good and bad, murmured their incantations and prepared their potions alone and in secret, unassisted by human and, as far as is known, any other agency. They were individual performers, and their powers were such that they could, if necessary, cure from a distance, so that a sick animal or person would begin to show signs of recovery before the person consulting the charmer reached home. That was like a person that you would go and visit if there was something wrong in your family or on your farm. And a lot of people would have compared them to the druids that we were talking about earlier. Throughout the modern period, there were male and female practitioners of like herb magic. In the Manx custom, they were fairy doctors. Females were known as herb women.
I'm sorry, they were known as what women?
Herb.
Oh, okay.
Herb.
I genuinely didn't know what you said.
I thought you were trying to make me say it again.
No. I was like, I think I heard the H, but I wasn't sure.
And it seems like such a strong tradition in the Isle of Man, because the Isle of Man gets its name from a Celtic god called Manon, or like a legendary figure called Manon, who was known to have a cloak of invisibility. And a lot of people who would sail past the Isle of Man said that you often won't see it because it has a cloak of fog around it, so you won't realize until you're above it. So they say that that's why it's the Isle of Man, because it wears a cloak of invisibility. And it's the descendants of Manon who live on the Isle of Man who have this knowledge of the land and healing and cunning folk and all of that, because they're literally descended from Celtic legend.
So do people crash on the island?
Probably way back, not now, because
okay.
now it's like a proper
now they know about it.
Yeah, they know about it. Would you have heard of the Isle of Man? Like, it's just a tiny little island. Yeah. Well, probably their biggest, best known export is the Manx cat. It's a cat that has naturally no tail.
Oh yeah.
So a Manx cat, they're originally from the Isle of Man.
I was just reading about the tortoiseshell cats last night. I don't remember why. It just came up and I was like, oh, and then I remember people saying that they can only be female. Oh. And I was like, wait, why? And I was then on a deep dive on why is this a thing? And apparently it's because black fur and orange fur can only be carried by the X chromosome. Oh. So if you have two X's, then that can have black and orange fur. But if you have an XY, it can only be orange or only be black.
Yeah, because I've heard that orange female cats are extremely rare. You very rarely ever see them.
Oh, that's weird. I never knew about that.
So if you ever see a feral orange cat, it's more than likely a boy.
Fun facts from Emily and Neve
about cats. We're talking about witches and people that have this cunning and all of that. It's all knowledge based, because according to Celtic folk belief, everybody has access to supernatural power in the form of whether it's spells or charms, or if you actually go to the fairy world yourself for good or evil, anybody who wished to make use of it could tap into that power, which is a very nice thought to have, that we could all be witches if we want. That we all have that in us.
Everyone is magic. We're all magic.
To focus on one of the magical women that I was talking about before, the Ban Feasa, who is the wise woman. Those are women who were known to have direct communication with, as they're known, the good people, the fair folk, the fairy folk, the fae. They gain their knowledge from the fae. They're taught by the fae, and they invoke the fae if they need help with something. It's believed by many people that a Ban Feasa gains her power after being taken by the fairy folk or spending time with them when she's young, and then they teach her occult knowledge and then keep providing her information. Some of the special knowledge that she might have is she might appear to have knowledge of events occurring at a distance, so something that's happening at the same time that she would have no way of knowing. She knows the location of lost items, which would be really fucking handy.
Yeah.
And she reckons that all of this knowledge is given to her by the fairies. She's like a big figure in the community. She provides divination, herbal remedies, and like helps you solve problems that are caused by the fairies as well. They're almost exclusively older women who are unmarried and who are known to travel. Like, imagine being so weird that you travel. Like,
Right.
That's how tiny and insular these societies were.
She travels. She's a witch.
Some of the things attributed to Banfasta, they were more used to like love and sex magic in medieval times. A lot of times they would have done the curse of impotence because, as you remember, you could divorce a man if he was impotent.
Hell yeah.
If a woman was, maybe for whatever reason, she couldn't divorce herself, she would...
I'd be writing that on my curse tablet.
She would prepare a charm or get the Banfasa to prepare a charm and put it in the bed, and it would cause impotence. It would also, if he was having an affair, you would prepare this charm of impotence because, like, if you can't have him, no one can. The most famous who was considered to be a Banfasa is Bridget. She was stolen by the church, so she's Saint Bridget, but she was Bridget first, and she's also known as a goddess too.
Her day is coming up soon, right?
Yeah, it is. We're going to have
Bridget's Day.
a bank holiday at the start of February for
Nice.
St. Bridget. It's only a new bank holiday. It's actually the latest bank holiday. We've only had it like 3 years. They just added it to the calendar. The government were like, we should have a national holiday for her.
I wonder why.
I think they realised that we didn't have as many bank holidays as other countries in Europe. So we're like, can we have another one? And they're like, okay, what's a big date on our calendar?
Let's think about this.
Yeah. Because we had no like days off between Christmas and St. Patrick's Day in March. So people were getting very depressed.
And then you don't have like the 4th of July.
We don't. We have like other, like we like the May bank holiday and the August bank holiday and stuff, but we've no like Martin Luther King Day or anything like that, you know?
Yeah.
I don't even know when that is.
It was just this on Monday.
Oh, okay.
It's always the second Monday in January.
Oh, I didn't realize it was January. That's good.
Yeah, so it falls on my birthday a lot. Our birthday.
Our birthday.
Our birthday.
That's a lot better than Blue Monday. Last year it was Blue Monday. It's like supposed to be the most depressing day of the year. And I was like, oh, it's my birthday, but that's fine.
Oh. Maybe that's why they put it around that time, because I don't know why else they would have had Martin Luther King Day in the middle of January.
Yeah, unless it's like his birthday or something.
Oh, I guess his birthday was on January 15th.
Oh, cool.
Huh.
He missed us by a day.
He did. How dare he?
So Bridget, aka the goddess Bridget, aka Banfasa Bridget, she famously blessed a man whose wife hated him, and she made her love him forever. So she was able to perform some pretty powerful love magic. Don't know if I love that, Bridget. It's not great about on the whole consent thing.
Yeah. Forcing somebody to love somebody else.
She performed the first in Irish history recorded abortion, as I've put down here, the fetus deletus, because she would have been she was like, as we said, like these wise women could be like midwives and healers and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So in Ireland, you told us last week or last episode about the cursing stones. In Ireland, there was also a big tradition of cursing to do with stones.
That's cool.
In pre-modern Ireland, cursing was regarded as an actual real thing and a legitimate activity. It was a form of supernatural justice that only afflicted guilty parties. So if you went and you said that somebody had cursed you, it was only because you had fucked up.
I got him.
So the cursing stones, similar to what you were talking about in our previous episode, they were sort of like the mass rocks that I've spoken about before. They would have like some sort of ecclesiastical significance, probably a pagan significance. After the church came, they were associated with a Christian saint. So what they looked like is it was a stone with a depression carved into it, almost to look like a bowl. So they were called a bullen stone in some places. The bullen had the power to curse someone, but only if the punishment was just. If not, the person who performed the ritual would receive the curse. That's why you can't fuck with somebody, because the curse will come back on you if the person that you're trying to curse does not deserve it.
Yeah.
It was a ritual turning, always anti-clockwise or against the sun, and it would include a prayer or an invocation. The turning of the stones was preceded by a ritual fasting in preparation for carrying out the curse. They attribute like this like belief in curses and the belief in that you only get cursed if you deserve it as part of the reason why Ireland never really had a witch craze or witch trials, because people thought that witches were performing this altruistically and that it was
sort of
for good
karma in a way.
Yeah.
It wasn't
Yeah.
just to be evil.
It wasn't to be vengeful.
Yeah.
And like if you didn't fuck up or you didn't like hurt somebody, then you had nothing to worry about,
Right.
because a curse wouldn't work on you.
That's kind of nice. I like that idea.
And like it was interesting because in Ireland they actually passed a Witchcraft Act in 1563 and it just didn't really work. They had like maybe one trial. We'll get into it during the witch trials, but yeah, it's just the whole thing just did not take off in Ireland. Like dating back to Celtic times and like throughout it all, even after Christianity came in, this belief in curses and in healing and cunning folk and all of that was so inherent that they were just like, witches are part of us and part of our society and part of our culture. Like there's no point in putting these women to death.
Right. That's nice. Good on them.
So we'll talk a little bit more about that legislation and in particular the Scottish witch trials, because there was like 4,000 people tried for witchcraft in Scotland.
Wow.
More to come in our witch trials / church episode. So yeah, cursing comes like basically the power of words and that like what you say can be made true. There was a Manx custom of swearing on a grave. There are actually accounts, you know, when you say, oh, I swear on like my
I swear on my
grandmother's
mom.
Yeah. In Manx custom, there are accounts of people actually lying on a grave with a Bible on their chest in order to settle debts. So they would lie and then they had to tell the truth about what debts that they owed. They actually had to outlaw it in the 1600s because people were using it to like just basically lie. You weren't supposed to lie.
Oh no.
And then, like I said, there was no witch craze. Around the same time, there was stories from continental Europe and British folklore of witches flying around in covens, like on their brooms, like meeting with the devil, using their powers to curse and torment their neighbours. In Ireland, she was working with the community, and if she was doing something malicious, it was a lot less destructive. They would do things like steal milk while in the form of a hare, or they would work magic on cattle. These were the bad things that the Irish witches would do. And they were also known as butter witches. The butter witches were different from their European sinister counterparts. This came like right the way up to like the Enlightenment. There was the Bishop of County Down wrote, a man in his diocese swore that he took aim at a hare that he found in his barn and an old woman rose up. So she was in stealing his butter.
I really like the idea of witches being like rabbits and hares.
Yeah, just like complete shape-shifting. People claim that like milk and butter could be harmed by sorcery. So strong was the image of the butter witch that it remained a part of Irish rural pop culture up until the 20th century.
Wow.
That's how much it took hold. You could protect against them you could burn the thatch from the roof of whoever was being afflicted by the butter witch. And then if you wanted her to stop fucking with your cattle, you had you had a bonfire on May Eve and you would have to drive your cattle through the smoke to purify them to keep her away. And that also happened in the Isle of Man. In 1695, the Parliament outlawed profane swearing and cursing because they were detestable sins and you were fined if you swore a curse on somebody.
Wow.
In County Mayo during the 19th century, clergymen cleared their parishes of ancient cursing stones, destroying or burying the unusual rocks that had long been used to lay powerful maledictions. So this is the way that like basically Irish people lived like right up until like the mid 20th century. Like they believed in these cursing stones. They believed in folk healing. People still believe in folk healing and folk cures. To finish us off, I'm just going to tell you about a modern Ban Feasa. A woman called Biddy Early, who was born sometime around 1900 and died sometime around the 1970s. She's a very mysterious woman. She was a member of the travelling community in Ireland they're a separate ethnic group from Irish people who traditionally live as a reclaimed word, gypsies. They're distinct from the Roma people, but would have very loosely connected customs, as in they lived in caravans. They would have certain crafts that they would always do, like whether it's stonemasonry or knackery, which is where you take away like dead animals to destroy them if you don't want to bury them on your land. Knackery, yeah. That's actually a derogatory term for them as well. People call them...
Oh.
Yeah.
Sounds very close to another terrible word.
Yes, it does. The formal like term for them is members of the travelling community. So Biddy Early was a traveller woman. Remember when we said earlier when the band Feasa was a woman who's known to travel? This could also be an interpretation. She was a traveller.
Okay.
So in perfect Irish style, the most important source of information comes from the oral tradition. So everybody has just been passing around stories about this legendary woman for over a century now. The travelling community tend to have like a very strong folklore, superstition, tradition. Like I had actually sent you a message telling you about, like, for an example, even in modern times, like members of the travelling community, if somebody in their home dies while they live there, they burn the home down.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's part of their custom. So usually that would have always been a caravan. So they would burn down their caravan.
Wow.
That's just one of a lot of their customs and their superstitions and their traditions.
Can you even imagine?
I know.
Like doing that?
I know. It's like, oh, my dad died. Now I have to burn my house down. It's like, what a terrible week. Jesus.
That's what's so crazy.
It's not certain how Biddy got her magic, but it is said that her son Sean was returning from his court, which is like an Irish term for visiting somebody at night. So like it can talk about dating them. So when you're courting, my parents talk about when they're dating, they say they were courting.
Like courting?
Like courting, but they say courting. I think
Okay.
it comes from this Irish word, but it would just be the same as courting.
Okay. So it's not just seeing somebody at night. It's like seeing somebody at night.
Yeah.
Ooh, spicy.
Sean was returning from his court when he met a crowd of fairies who were playing hurling, which is like a traditional Gaelic game with sticks. It's kind of like field hockey. They were one man down, so they asked him to play with them. He did so and his side won, and as a reward they gave him a magic bottle which he was instructed to give to his mother, and with it she could cure all diseases. So that's apparently where Biddy got her power from.
She got her groove back.
This bottle was known as the Budgel Draechta, which means magic bottle. It served the same purpose as like a crystal ball that a fortune teller would have. She would always have it in her possession and hold it. And when she held it, she was able to see what was wrong with the person that she was called to help. So she could help diagnose them when she held her Budgel Draechta. And sometimes this was a pishog. A pishog is in a fairy curse. Like it wasn't always like a physical ailment. So that was like her main focus, was to counteract spells and diagnose what ailment was wrong with you or how you had pissed off the fairies, and what you could do to appease them again. She would also give you herbal remedies as well. She had like a couple of rules as well. So she would give a herbal remedy, but she made it clear that if a doctor was called in, that her power would stop working.
Is that like in an attempt to get people to not call a doctor?
I think it's because as like time went on, people would go to her after they'd already been to a doctor. So she wanted them to put all of their faith in her.
Okay.
So if you called a doctor back again, she would say to you like, oh, like my cure will stop working if you call a doctor.
Seems a little dangerous.
It does seem a little dangerous. She would only accept payment in kind lest her power desert her, but she did manage to receive a, quote, comfortable income from her cures.
Oh.
So she was making a little bit of bank.
Just a little.
She was known to say that if a chronic infection or an undiagnosed ailment didn't respond to ordinary treatment, it must have been from a supernatural cause, and it was her place to discover why.
I feel like we've heard about this before. The fact that...
In the folk cures?
Maybe it was about the idea that if something couldn't cure it, then it was like a supernatural cause. I'm trying to remember when we talked about that.
Yeah, I think it might have been our folk cures episode.
Yeah, maybe. It's hard to remember that far back.
Something that you could do to piss off the fairies was, we talked about in our fairies episode, you could plow across a fairy ring or disturb their fairy ring.
So rude.
Or you could build a wall blocking their path. Or one of the things that I've never heard of before is you could do like a social faux pas in the fairies' eyes, such as overpraising an animal or a child without simultaneously saying God bless, which is very strange.
Oh, that is so interesting because my friend who is Muslim, that's kind of like a thing that they do in that culture.
Oh.
Is because if you, like when they saw my daughter, they're like, oh my God, she's so cute. Like, praise God.
Oh.
But they say it because it's almost like, I'm trying to remember exactly how she described it to me, but it was something about, like, if you didn't say that, then it sort of implied that you saying, like, oh, your child is cute means that you're envious.
Oh, okay.
And that would be, like, almost like a curse.
Right. Oh, wow. That's so interesting.
I was like, oh, that's so cool. I'd never heard of anybody doing that before.
Yeah. That's so interesting. And I find that, like, it's so weird that it's like there's similar things across these two cultures, which we always see when we're looking into this research.
Yeah. Is that there's so much overlap between completely different places and cultures.
It's interesting as well that, like, you would have to say God bless, but if you didn't say God bless, it would piss off the fairies when you think about it. Because you would think it's like a pagan belief conflicting.
Right. You would say fairy bless or something.
Yeah. But the way this was sort of explained was Biddy believed she was like a mediator between the ecclesiastical world and the ordinary people. So she would treat the priests with like a directness of speech, which other people wouldn't have been comfortable doing because she didn't care because she had the fairies on her side. And she was a mediator between the people and the aspects of the fairy world as well, which they couldn't or weren't able to directly deal with. So the band Feasa was a link with the supernatural and the fairy world on one hand and the ecclesiastical world on the other, establishing like this weird sort of spiritual equilibrium in the community. And that is my episode on Celtic witches and witchcraft and magic.
I loved it.
Aren't you glad I didn't go into Norse witchcraft in the same episode?
That would have been a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, even with the Greek and Roman stuff, there are so many pockets of it. And you could just keep going and going and going. That could have been alone a 3-part like thing. All right.
Next time, Emily is going to bring us an episode on...
We'll be journeying to the north and covering some, hopefully, Nordic witchcraft and wizardry and sorcery and all that other fun stuff.
Think about like runes and all of that cool fun stuff. And
a lot of hell yeah.
And I'm sorry to Emily in advance for all of the pronunciation that she's going to have to try and do.
Oh God, I didn't even think about that part, so thank you.
Because I was just thinking,
I let a jump start on it.
I let myself off easy by doing the Irish one because I only had Irish things to pronounce.
Yeah, which is easy for you.
Yeah, make sure you come back for that one, and it's going to be really metal, probably.
Hell yeah! And then come back for the one after that, and the one after that, and the one after that. You should just play the exit music while I'm saying that. And after that, and after that. All right, everybody. I am Emily.
And I have been Neve. And fuck
yeah, folklore. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Talk to you next time. Bye. Why am I waving? They can't see me.